Welcome to part two of owning a vacation rental. Okay, this one's called scouting the area legally, and we already talked about economically, but legally, wait, what does that matter? It matters a lot, and let's talk about that. So, nightly rentals are one of those things that are really cool, right? I mean, it's a great idea. Everybody likes it. Hey, I can have a vacation home somewhere. I can rent it out, make some money, and live there myself. It's great, right? Everybody likes it, except your neighbors. Okay. Your neighbors don't always like it because sometimes you got permanent residents there. And frankly, I don't blame them. If I lived in a home, I think that would be hard to have my next door be a, vacation rental, right? And so that's one of the things you want to do is make sure that you're building or buying a home in an area that it's legally okay to do it in. And again, this is very, very important because oftentimes if you don't do it in an area that you should, you will end up in with some problems, okay? Because you're going to have neighbors that don't like you, and they'll fight you, and they may or may not win, right? But the headache of doing that is hard. So when looking for an area, obviously, I do recommend using a realtor. I think realtors are great. I think they definitely serve a purpose in helping you find a home, finding the right home. Realtors are great. One thing I would add though is that not all realtors know the area. They may know generally some things, and some are very educated on certain areas. One thing I found though is that it's probably very helpful to call the city. The city will oftentimes know exactly which areas you can build in or buy in, okay? And this is really important because, again, if you're looking to find an area where you can do nightly rentals, you want to make sure that you're in compliance with the city, make sure that you're not going to have any problems because you're building or buying a home that's probably worth a lot of money. And you're putting a large investment into an area that you want to make sure that you can get a return on, right? If you can't get a return on it, then, because you can't rent it out, man, that was a bad investment, right? You're in a bad spot. So again, one of my secrets is, hey, call the city. Call the city. The city's actually very helpful. A lot of times if you're buying in an area that does a lot of vacation rentals, they're familiar with this, right? This is something that they know about. And so they'll be able to help you with that so that you can get the right home in the right area, okay? So that's how you're gonna find it that way. One other thing to look at, okay, is let's say you find an area that you're good in, that you can do nightly rentals in, but it has an HOA, okay? Hey, an HOA, okay, I don't really like HOAs, but maybe it's no big deal and we're good there. Be very careful about the HOA you build or buy in. The HOA has a lot of authority and can cause problems. Here's a story, okay? On the first nightly rental that I owned, I bought in an area that had an HOA. When I built the home, I was very upfront with what I was doing. Hey, I'm going to do a nightly rental. The area was zoned for nightly rentals. The city approved it. It was just an area that was totally zoned for nightly rentals. So I knew I was good, okay? One of the things though I wanted to find out was, hey, I want to manage this home myself. Okay, I don't want to have to use a property management company. I want to manage it myself. It works well with my business. I can do this. That's what I wanted to do. Again, not for everyone, but for me, that's what I wanted to do. The HOA said, hey, no problem. The builder, no problem. Everybody's good. We're good. So we built this home, and about a week or two before the home was to be completed, before I was to get the certificate of occupancy, the HOA lady, actually the lady that I was working with got fired, and they were working with a new one, and the HOA basically said, hey, we're going to manage your house. And I said, no, you're not. I've built this house, prepping it. I had everything in there so I could do it remote and make everything work. And they came back and said, no, hey, we want to manage it. And it's not like it's a small management fee either. They wanted to charge about 40% of the income, which is a lot of money. Okay, all my profit essentially. I'd be doing this and I wouldn't make any money. Not to mention, I don't know anything about this management company. I'd heard bad things about them already because I didn't know they existed, but I just was told I didn't have to use them. And so this was not good. I had just built this house. I built it how I wanted. I was going to manage it myself. So I basically said, hey, no, I'm going to manage it myself. You already told me we could do it. So for the next year to 2 years, the HOA and I fought about this issue. And we they would. So one little fact too: the HOA was owned by the golf course that this house was built around. And the problem was the golf course owner also owned the management company. It was a huge conflict of interest. There's so many problems with it because everything was run by the same company, right? And that's why they said, hey, no, you have to work with us because, again, it's their company. And normally an HOA gets turned over to the people, but in this case, the HOA was still owned by the golf course for 99 years, right? So again, some things that, hey, would have been nice to know. I should have done a little more investigative work. But for the next 2 years, I was fighting with them. And, basically just kind of, hey, I'm managing it myself. I'm going to do it. You can tell me, I'm not going to, if you want to force me to do it, you're going to have to come at me, but I'm going to run it myself. And so I ran it for myself, got great reviews, 5-star reviews, was doing a great job managing it, had a local cleaner. It was great, okay? But occasionally, for the first little bit, they kind of left me alone. Then they kind of gradually started to get involved. And they would say, hey, you're renting it out. You need to come with us, come work with us. And they would charge me fines because, again, the HOA was the one saying I had to do this. And so they would fine me, okay? They were minor fines, so I was like, I'll pay the fine. It's worth it, right? I'm making way more on my own. I'm not going to pay 40% to a management company. I'll keep doing it myself. Unfortunately, over time, they continued to increase those fines till they became quite high, the fines that they were doing. And it got expensive, okay? During this time, we'd hired an attorney because there were several of us that had been told one thing and were telling another. So we had several people that were helping us, lawyers and stuff like that, helping, telling us we had a case, different things like that. We fought them. Ultimately, the end of the story, get to the concluding part, is we ended up in mediation, and they had they had very deep pockets, and the attorney they hired was really good. The judge who sympathized with us, that was the mediator, said, hey, these are bogus charges, but you have to pay them with real money, okay? Meaning, you're in an HOA, that's its own form of government. You agreed to live there under that HOA. You have to kind of comply, right? Even though, hey, I sympathize with you, it is wrong. There's so many conflicts of interest. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the law is the law. You're going to have to comply. So we ended up mediating. I ended up working with them. They started managing managing the home, and unfortunately, they didn't do a great job. Things went downhill. I started getting worse reviews. I couldn't really do anything about it. I ended up selling that home and doing a 1031 exchange and building a new one. So a lot of headache. This is over several years period of time and stuff like that. My point in bringing up this story is finding the right home, scouting the area legally is very important. If you're going into an area, make sure, number one, you can get a license to rent it out. Number two, if you do build in an HOA and you don't want them to manage it, or what authority, what abilities do you have, find that out. Try to get it in writing. But again, ultimately know that HOAs can change their rules too, okay? And unless the HOA is owned by the people and it's just owned by one person, you might be in trouble. So again, important things to learn. Unfortunately, I had to learn it in a difficult way. Hopefully you won't. Do some due diligence ahead of time, way before you're starting to shovel that first thing of dirt. So this concludes part 2.